the thing is with photography, as all of your listeners will know, is that there's a million ways of doing things. And even if you do things commercially, you can ask one question to 10 different photographers and you'll end up with 10 different answers. And all you want really, I think, as a photographer, when you're asking for advice, is a reassurance that you're okay and that you're trying your best, and is this best okay?
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk with women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. Our guest today is Emily Renier, a wedding and family photographer who infuses a passion for street and documentary photography into her work. This blend of styles helps her create images that her clients love, and in recognition of her skills, Emily was named a Fujifilm ambassador in January 2024. Hi Emily, thank you so much for joining me today on the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. When I've seen the people that you have on here, it's a huge honour, so thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's really great to chat with you again. So could we start right at the beginning by hearing about how you first got into photography?
It's probably because I was a grumpy teenager. I think that I have to be thankful and grateful to my grumpy teenage years. I moved to Spain when I was 15 from Belgium with no Spanish and no English, and went to an English school there. And that kind of meant that I was quite alone for a lot of the time, trying to figure myself out over there. And my dad gave me a camera, and so I had a moped. It was classic sort of, trying to find yourself when you're a teenager. And yeah, just taking my camera out on the hills of the southern Spanish countryside and taking some sunsets. Now that was the very first memory of kind of getting to grips with composition as such. And then got given cameras by my dad mainly over the years, and then went into different careers, became a teacher and so on. And then around 2000, I left teaching and to join kind of full-time photography. I didn't know at the time I was going to do that, but it kind of happened that way. And I started photographing families and weddings. I mean, just before then it was street photography, but kind of that led to commercial work such as, family work and weddings. And that's where it all came from. So it started, when I was 15. And I'm sure that's how it starts for most people. You kind of get given a camera by someone, you go, "Ooh, I like that," and then kind of evolves from there.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of people I've spoken to, they do exactly what you did, just go off into a different career and then somehow, one way or another, come back to photography and discover it as their career. But what was it that inspired you to make it your career?
Well, obviously, it's really interesting that you just said that lots of people do that as a second career. I think that, especially with kind of, people in their 40s, and you kind of have that midlife crisis, don't you? You kind of go, well, actually, maybe all the stuff that I thought was important is not actually that important.
Yeah.
Earning a huge salary or just being successful in a different sphere or whatever success means in your own way, you kind of realise that's not so important. And yeah, you decide to kind of go ahead with a different path. I think what got me going was that I'd shot street photography for a while, and then a friend of mine said, do you fancy taking pictures of my wedding because I'm getting married? And then I thought, well, yeah, I'll give that a go. And then my niece, who's a similar age to me, my husband's much older than me, she said, "Oh, well, I'd love some pictures of my baby. Would you come round?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do that." And that's where it all started, But it was not like it was not necessarily a kind of overnight sort of decision. It was more a kind of organic evolution of what I was going to do, and very much figuring out all along those lines what mattered to me and who I was and what didn't matter to me. And I kind of realised that actually what really matters to me is people. Yeah, it's people. It's making connections with people. It's having a laugh. It's finding out who I am in the process of finding out who other people are. And I think that photography kind of gives me that tool. It gives me the tool or the way to figure that out, really.
It sounds to me like you probably didn't sit down at any point and write a business plan, but I could be wrong. Did you do that?
No, I did actually.
Did you?
Yeah, no, I did. Because before going into teaching, I had how many careers have I had? before going into teaching, I actually worked in business, and I have a business degree, so a master's in business. So there is a bit of business acumen there on paper. There wasn't at the start of starting business, because theory versus practice is always a bit of an interesting gap. But yes, I did have a business plan as such, and I kind of figured out what my costs were going to be and where I needed to go. So I've always actually been fairly diligent about my costs, if you see what I mean, and understanding kind of the impact of decisions that you make and how strategic these need to be. And I was in senior management as a teacher, so that whole strategy has always been part of like the way I try and address something. But at the same time, it's been because you're alone, this is great. You can literally make a decision one day and go, oh, I made this great business plan 2 days ago. And then you learn something new. You go, scrap that, I'll go with something else now, So it was like, it was a business plan, but it was very sort of organic and evolving how I want it to evolve over time.
Yeah. And when you're thinking about switching, like you say, you could go next day, I'm going to do something completely different. Do you actually sit down and rewrite your business plan first, or you just get on with it and then think, I need to rewrite that?
No, I'll just get on with it. The great thing about you owning your business is you don't have to, prove anything to anyone. I don't have to take my report to anyone. So I suppose it's important to have a clear direction, even if that direction changes the next day, at least to know which step you're going. Am I going north, east, west, south? Having that first step. And then once you take the first step, you go, well, I might go slightly west or slightly east. But, you kind of, it's having the first direction that's important. It was great to kind of go from teaching and the education sector where you have to, the admin side is insane, to not having to really do any sort of admin to that scale, or having to prove, yourself to a different, different hierarchy of management. It was such a, sort of breath of fresh air in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I guess in times of uncertainty, sometimes it's nice to look back and just sort of think, no, this is what I planned. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, definitely. Uncertainty, and I'm a bit of a control freak, because I get really anxious about life generally. So the more of a plan I have, the kind of the easier life is for me. So I'm a great believer in big to-do lists and stuff like that. So I do love having a plan, but I also am quite happy to change my plan. And that's definitely, as being a business owner, you can't not change your plan, because you have to respond all the time to your clients or to trends or to how things develop if you want to survive, especially in our industry where things are so saturated at the moment. You've really got to be responsive to everything that happens on a daily basis.
Yes, that's very true. How did you know that you were actually ready to start charging for weddings or for your photographic work?
That is such a good question. I knew right from the beginning I needed to charge something, because although, my husband was earning, a good wage, he could support me, and I really wanted to contribute, and that was important to me. And I like to kind of have my own independence financially. So I needed to charge just for that element of my well-being. But also, if you're going to do a job professionally, it needs to be sustainable over time. And you might do 1 or 2 shoots for free for portfolio's sake, but after that, you very quickly begin to resent is not the right word, but you very quickly begin to understand your worth, because you think, well, I've just spent 4 hours with your family, it took me 2 hours to travel and back. Now I'm going to spend a day in the studio, editing your pictures. Why should I give all that to you for free or for an amount that's not worth what it is? So it was very much a case of, in order for me to keep turning up to my jobs and I had to stand up for my worth. And in that sense, it kind of also develops a really healthy relationship between you and your clients, because you're saying, this is me and I'm worth respecting and I'm worth my wage and, your investment in me. So it is a cool question you asked, because there was definitely a point where I was too cheap and I was too worried about putting my prices up. And in all fairness, if I'm totally honest, I have that conversation with myself still now, thinking, well, are my prices too high? Am I taking a mick, or are they too low? Or, you're constantly having that kind of mental debate. And at the end of the day, it is all about making it sustainable and having a healthy boundaries and a healthy relationship with your clients, and you saying to the world, this is me, I'm worth it, I'm going to stand up for myself. And, I've worked with lots of clients where they might be really affluent to not so affluent, and what they all had in common is understanding that what we give them as photographers is something that they can't do themselves. And as soon as you're giving something to someone that they can't do themselves, that automatically gives it quite an important value. But yeah, it's not an easy right or wrong or black and white. And I do really feel for people who start up, because it's a leap of faith, but you've got to take that leap, and it makes you feel great in the long term.
Looking back at the very first wedding that you shot, that you actually charged for, how did that go? How did you feel about it?
I still remember the time when the brides were, it was for a mate of mine that I went to school with, and the brides walked down the aisle together, and my knees were shaking. I still remember feet shaking all over, thinking I cannot get this wrong, and it was a really tricky wedding to shoot as well, because it was a November wedding, and it was in a barn with no natural light whatsoever. And I don't, use flash until the dance, kind of time. So it was, I was, using my X-T2 at the time, and I was really pushing the ISO to its limit. So, but there was nothing like it, like to be my own boss at that time and create memories for those two brides, and then delivering that gallery. It was just the best feeling ever. And then that's what you kind of get hooked on, the element of, being able to create something so emotionally powerful for people. I do still remember it now, this shaking in the knees. I don't have it anymore, thank God. I still have a healthy, kind of dose of nerves for sure, but not to that degree.
You're shooting. Are you so in the moment you just kind of work through the day, you go through the various stages of the wedding, taking photographs? Or do you sometimes capture an image and you think, oh yes, that's the one, I'm really happy with that?
Yeah, both. And it also really depends on the wedding and the day, and that's also been an element of like my learning journey, because initially I used to give myself such a hard time if I wasn't feeling it. I don't know if you feel the same way when you take your camera out on the streets or anywhere in the garden, and there's days when you just don't feel it. Now, what do you do when someone's paid you a large amount of money and you don't feel it? Well, there's kind of elements of a formula you follow to make sure that you're doing everything you can for that client, for sure. You can't help that sometimes that's just going to be the case, that you're not feeling the flow. It's like that kind of amazing life force that you feel when everything clicks in together. The majority of the time, I'm lucky it does click in and it does happen. I suppose a good example would be the wedding I shot this weekend, where everything just was fantastic. Like, the weather was just perfect. It was overcast outside, so didn't have to deal with harsh shadows. But the light came out at 7:00 when I needed the golden hour to come out. It was fantastic, and the crowd was brilliant. But but I also had time to kind of shoot what was banal and normal about a wedding, as well as the key moments and the things that make it so memorable. So it is a case of kind of doing the formula and thinking, right, that's what my client needs and wants from me. But I also then need to kind of go, right, this is Emily and her style and her voice. Now, what do I provide that's slightly different, which is essentially what my client decided to come to me for. So it's an element of both. You have to kind of go, what's the formula? I need to follow that. Plus, okay, what's really doing it for me now? Or there's that moment over there, or there's that bit of geometry in that shot over there that's really kind of captured my attention. So it's a combination of both. And sometimes you have to rely more on one than the other, depending on the energy that you have.
If you're having a day when you're not feeling it that much and there's not that much energy around, do you have any strategies that can really pull you through beyond having a shot list and knowing that you've got to tick these boxes? How you get the Emily into the photos?
What I tend to try and do is it's a good question again, Angela, because, these inevitably happen. It all comes down to the emotion and the feeling, and it's trying to re-engage with the feeling in the room and what's important to the bride and groom, and kind of thinking, right, okay, what's the story behind this couple? What did they tell me on their Zoom? What material have I got to make this meaningful for them? And that's what I'll try and and dig into. Yeah, it doesn't always, happen. Sometimes I've shot weddings where it's a very clinical sort of, wedding where there's only 15, 20 people and it's a registry office that's not particularly fantastic and the light's not great and people are quite sort of morose and the energy is low. What do you do when that happens? Well, you do the best you can, and to a certain degree you have to. There's this amazing phrase that John Dolan, an amazing American wedding photographer, came up with recently. And in fact, he said to me, you've got to grieve the potential of an image if you can't have that potential. And you've got to grieve that potential really quickly so you can move on to the next thing. And he said that to me about a year ago, and it really stayed with me. It's kind of this thing that I've got to come to terms that I can't have this the way that I want it to be. All I can do is deal with the situation I'm given to the best of my ability. And then if I do that, then I know that I've given my client the best that I could for them. But yeah, sometimes that's just real life. Sometimes you're just given something that's fairly clinical and, there's nothing you can do about it. But as long as you do your best, and that's all they can ask of you.
Yes, that's true. What would you say were the biggest challenges that you've faced in your career so far?
The biggest, challenge is not my clients, it's dealing with myself and my own expectations of what I should deliver.
Uh-huh.
It's me. Yeah, my biggest challenge is me, Angela.
Fair enough. And now you're a Fujifilm ambassador, or an X photographer, as they're called. How did that come about, and what kind of impact has that had on you or your career?
You're full of amazing questions today.
Thank you very much.
So how did that come about? In 2017-18, when I took the plunge of leaving one career and jumping into the next, I was using Nikon at the time. And then I went to the Birmingham photography show and then found Fujifilm there through Kevin Mullins. And then basically bought my camera the day after I saw Kev talk. So in 2018, I've stayed with Fuji all that time. And what was remarkable is that from one day to the next, I basically couldn't stop taking pictures. So I had to use a Nikon and think, well, I'm not sure about what I'm doing, whether that's right or wrong, and would leave the Nikon in, area of my house and not use it again. And at the moment I bought my X-T2, which was the first camera that I bought, I just took pictures every day. And so I then started to share what I took, and when that, on Instagram mainly. And I think that a year and a half ago, I was approached by Fujifilm to see whether we could collaborate for a little while and work together on blog pieces and articles, and I did, and the relationship kind of evolved from there. And yeah, in January they made me a new ambassador. For me, that was like the biggest that was such an amazing moment, because I don't know if you know kind of the background of my story, but when I left my previous career, I'd left in a really poor state. I was really poorly mentally. I'd had a kind of catastrophic mental breakdown. And so, and I was, at a height of my career in that kind of, industry. And so from my perspective, I had to start from scratch with photography, and what it meant to be asked by Fujifilm. It meant, yeah, it's amazing and it's a fantastic honor in itself. But for me, it meant, oh, wow, I can actually pick myself up again. I can a really tough time, but I could go back from square one and try again. And that's what it meant to me at the time. Now, what it's done to me as my career, it's actually shown me that I'm probably more capable of things than I give myself credit for. Because, a while ago, I think, well, I can't do podcast interview. I can't do that. And here I am doing one. Or I can't go to corporate dues and, do the whole socializing. And I did that. And I couldn't possibly travel, and with Fujifilm, and I can't. Those social skills really kind of unnerve me. Well, I've been able to do that. So it's been a case of kind of showing to me that, oh, actually, I can do all these things. They're not as frightening as I thought they would be. And as long as I kind of stay the person that I am and remain as, kind of loyal to me as a person, or as authentic as I can be, then, and people are all right with that, well, then that's okay, and there's no problem with it. So the effect that it has on my career, I guess it's shown me that I'm that I can say yes more, that, you know, I don't have to kind of go automatically, no, I don't think I can do that. It's kind of like, yeah, actually I could. So it's changed me in a sense that I can say yes to opportunities more.
Do you think it's the fact that you're part of a creative community, as in, you know, the Fujifilm creators and X photographers, it's all about your creativity and what you can make with your camera, rather than, you know, as a teacher having to meet lots of targets and get kids through all their exams and all that sort of stuff? It's a very different kind of feeling. Do you think that's helped?
Yeah, massively, because in a sense that's kind of, you know, yes, I left the teaching world for many, many reasons, but definitely one of the lesser reasons was that I had gone into teaching because I am a sort of, you know, warm sort of creative person, and I wanted to enthuse with children around me. But definitely as a deputy head teacher, you just, you know, in the school that I was working at, that's not the platform I was given, so I couldn't use that creativity. And then now one day to the next, that I can just make my own images and kind of go with the flow. And what's been amazing about Fujifilm is, like, you know, right from the beginning of the start of the kind of relationship is I've been determined to kind of stay myself, and you know, I can be, you know, sometimes silly, or I can say, you know, like, I'll say the wrong things that come into my head, and I'm very spontaneous, and I've always kind of stayed the person that I am, and they've always kind of just accepted me exactly as I am. They've never kind of said, oh, can you not do a bit of this, or can you stop doing that? And so it's been really kind of validating, you know, this kind of go, well, we're signing up to Emily, so wherever Emily's creative flow goes, and that's great, you know. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I get a request for images and I'll send a few, and they might not choose any from that kind of crop, but it's fine, because they've also got their agenda, and they've also, you know, the reality of it is they're a camera company that have got to sell cameras, and you know, that's a relationship that's got to work for both of us. So, but so far I have found that they kind of, yeah, it's validating in a lot of sense.
Nice. Now, I noticed that you offer a mentoring service for photographers. What would you say are the most common issues that people face or would like to discuss with you when you're talking to them?
It's insecurity. It's kind of like, pricing is massive there, and I kind of give a lot, you know, I'd give advice on pricing for weddings. Again, I'd give advice with a caveat that, you know, I struggle myself too, but overall it's kind of needing a guiding sort of voice. And with mentoring, the most important thing is kind of the aspect of listening, a bit like counselling, if you like, that you kind of let the person evolve with their own path, because that's also very important when you're trying to figure out what kind of artist you want to be. But it's almost like they kind of say, well, this is the problem that I have, or this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And it's about kind of saying, well, this is what I think, but ultimately this is your business and your vision, and it's got to match with what you want to do with it. I like to think that it's validating choices rather than change their mind or kind of, you know, or giving an alternative principle. It's validating a vision for them and steering in a slightly in one direction, rather than kind of saying, no, we need to go completely a different angle. Because the thing is with photography, as all of your listeners will know, is that there's a million ways of doing things. And even if you do things commercially, you can ask one question to 10 different photographers and you'll end up with 10 different answers. And all you want really, I think, as a photographer, when you're asking for advice, is a reassurance that you're okay, and that, you know, you're trying your best, and is this best okay? And when I got mentoring from Kevin, initially, because I signed up to his one-to-one for the first year, and that's essentially all he did with me. He said, yeah, that's fine, yeah, that's fine, yeah, that's fine. And that's all I needed from him. And so that's what I try and provide for the people I work with.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a distinction between mentoring and teaching. They are quite different things, but mentoring is a very powerful tool as well.
Yeah, you're right. They are completely different things. And I suppose it's funny because, like, you know, with all the like experience I have of teaching, you could argue, well, for me, it would be kind of an easier approach. But like you say, it is a completely different thing. And also, obviously, teaching and mentoring adults to children is a completely different world anyway. But with the life experiences that I've gone through in the last kind of 6 years, and going through a mental breakdown, you do kind of readjust completely about what's actually important and how important and significant and essential our mental well-being is to our daily lives. So I try and make that a really important aspect of the way that I deal with people, because, we give ourselves such a hard time. It's such a visually comparative, if I can say that, like industry where you can go on Instagram and go, oh, they're doing this, they must be doing so well. And it is all smoke and mirrors. We're all struggling in our own way. And I think that if we can try and all us photographers have a kind of struggle amnesty where we're all saying, well, it might look like we're doing really well, but we are working really hard and we are struggling in other ways, then I think it would make the whole industry feel better about itself.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Please excuse this interruption. This podcast is supported by Fujifilm, one of the best-known photography brands in the world. Fujifilm's award-winning X series and GFX system cameras and lenses are suitable for all types of photographers and videographers. Each has been developed utilising experience gained from more than 90 years in the industry, featuring the unique film simulation modes that everybody knows and loves. Okay, let's get back to the show. Okay, well, I think it's a really good time to go for 6 from SheClicks. I've got 10 questions from SheClickers, and I'd like you to answer 6 of them, please, by picking numbers from 1 to 10. So if I could have your first number, please. 2. This is a nice one. What is your favourite part of a wedding? That's from Caroline.
Can I have 2 favourite parts? Oh, that's so hard. My favourite part?
Go on, you can have 2.
I can have 2.
Because there are lots of parts of a wedding, so I think 2's fair.
Okay, so the walking down the aisle always gets me, especially when it's the dad walking down the aisle. I'm this weird, contradictory person that I'm not particularly traditional person, but because my father passed away 3 years ago and I had, a complex relationship with him, as soon as I see that, it really kind of, I almost always tear up, even now. If I do 40 weddings a year, I'm still tearing up when that happens. It's a bit really ridiculous. Then the second aspect is the speeches. What I love about them is because they give me like a different kind of context to all the people that I'm dealing with. So you learn all of the different dimensions of the bride and the groom and what they've been through in their lives. And you'd be surprised how I literally haven't attended a wedding where there's been some sadness in the past of a wedding, a couple or some sort of stories that people have to share. And it just makes you realise that whoever you are, everyone's had their share of struggle or their share of difficulties. And it gives you, this extra dimension to the people you're dealing with. And it's very powerful.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Could I have your second number, please?
7.
What makes you pick up your camera when you're not working? And that question's from Liz.
Light. So any sort of nice light, which is pretty much every light for me, because I don't think there's such a thing as bad light. But say if I go past like a room in my house and there's this beautiful, golden hour light that's shimmering on the wall, and it could be a wall with nothing on, I'd be going, oh God, that's beautiful light. I will pick up my camera and take pictures of light. I've got lots of pictures of just light that mean nothing. But it feels like you're trying kind of capture a pot of gold when you're taking a picture of beautiful light. So, yeah, that's what will make me pick up my camera.
Okay. If you haven't got a wedding for a weekend, would you go out with your camera and take some photos, or do you do other things?
I tend to, I will do other things, but I tend to have a camera with me pretty much everywhere. And that enables me to kind of quickly take a shot if I want to. So yeah, I tend to have a camera with me all the time, just in case. Because every time I don't, and I'll go somewhere and I'll go, you know what, I'm just not going to bother taking my cameras. I always end up regretting it. So I can't, I just can't do it.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I've actually gone back into the house before now. I've locked the door. I thought, no, I can't go. I've got to go back and get the camera. You never know what's out there.
Exactly.
So can I have your third number, please?
9.
Number 9. What is your usual photography kit? And if you could only take one lens, what would it be? And quite a few people ask that question.
So I shoot with 3 cameras, 2 XH2Ss and 1 XT5. I have the 2 XH2Ss on a harness and the XT5 on my belt. and I'll use the XH2S for my 56mm and 18mm. This is crop sensor, and my X-T5 will have the 23mm on it usually, or the 33 depending. My favorite lens is the 18mm because I can crop down from there if I need to, but it gives me the flexibility to go as wide as I need to.
So you're all about prime lenses. You don't use zooms so much.
I have a 1.8-16 for the dance floor. That I have found that really helpful. The 2.8, it's really, really good. So I will use that for the dance floor. But during the day, which is, I'm only on the dance floor about an hour. So yeah, the majority of the day, or the 9 other hours will be just primes. I tend to I move a lot. I'm a very sort of physical photographer, and I kind of, mingle with guests and come in and out of like a group. So yeah, a Zoom really wouldn't be the right choice for me.
Right. Okay. So could I have your fourth number, please?
8.
Well, you touched on this slightly before, but how do you deal with clients who have unrealistic expectations? A few people ask that.
Well, that's been a learning journey. To begin with, I used to take it incredibly personally. I could get like an email at 8 o'clock in the evening and then like be writing a draft for an hour, trying to think of how to respond to a client that, would have rattled me slightly. And now I just put myself in their shoes, because they don't have the understanding that we do of what goes into the job. So now it's all about, I tend to kind of, put myself in their shoes and approach it with far more empathy. So I don't think I can remember in the last year or so that I've had, I haven't had really a difficult client. The only thing that happened at a wedding recently is the father of the groom was really rude to me in front of other guests. It really affected me for the rest of the day. I didn't say anything because I thought, well, this isn't fair on the bride. The bride never asked for her father-in-law to be rude, so I don't want to spoil anything to do with her day. And so I dealt with it that way. But I tend to kind of, if it's by email or if it's a bride saying, well, I'm not happy about something, I don't want to sound big-headed. Please don't think I am, but it literally just doesn't happen. And it's also because I think, I also think British people are incredibly polite. So even if your complaints can often sound like compliments sometimes, so you'll kind of go, thank you so much for the images, but I don't suppose, you'd be able to kind of like, so you're so kind and nice the way you ask for something that it tends to be then a conversation. And I'll go, yeah, of course I can do that. And I'll go and kind of, deal with their request. If it's something that is so impossible to do, then I will just tell them, but in a kind way. And I often pick up the phone and so they can hear the tone of my voice and make it a dialogue. But like I said, I deal with very relaxed people, so it doesn't tend to happen very much. And if I do, empathy goes a very long way.
But it's like you touched on earlier. You said, you attract the clients who want you. So, they've gone to your website and they've gone to your Instagram account and they've seen the sort of photographs that you create, and that's what they want, and they know what you do. And so their expectations is kind of set out at the start, and you have a conversation with them. You mentioned you have a Zoom call, so you can talk through what you're going to do on the day. So hopefully that's kind of, you're managing it before there's a problem.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what's really important is to have as many filters as possible, so that all of the clients that you're not wanting to work with kind of get filtered out naturally. Yes, there will be some times when you end up having a bride who will say, oh, can you go and shoot all that and detail, which is not what I do at all. And I kind of think, well, how did that happen? Why does she think I would do that? And then I kind of remind myself, thinking, well, all she thinks is I'm a wedding photographer. She doesn't have necessarily a wider context. So it's the empathy that kicks in and goes, well, no, I'm dealing, I'm going to provide the images that this bride wants because it's her wedding day. But yeah, the branding generally and the way that I am on the Zoom session with my clients, it's I overshare almost immediately. We might kind of, swear online, or we might kind of say stupid things for each other, and that automatically kind of shows that I'm going to go at this like a really relaxed person. And absolutely at Zoom level, I have lost clients because they go, well, no, that's not right for me. And that's fine, because that's exactly what a Zoom session is designed for. If someone doesn't book me after that, I'm actually thinking, well, this is great, because we wouldn't have worked out together on the day if you believe that I'm not the right person for you now. So yeah, a good natural filter is really important.
Do you ever do the reverse where, you have a conversation with the clients, they're willing to go for it, but you sort of think, well, no, I don't think they actually want what I provide. So you say, I don't think I'm the right photographer for you.
I do that now more that I'm more confident. In fact, when you said, what has Fujifilm done for you? A bit like the Romans. It has given me confidence. It's given me confidence to go, actually, I can decline and I can put myself first here. In all seriousness, it doesn't happen often. This year, so if I'm not shooting as many weddings this year as last year, because it's a bit of a blip year for the industry, so I think I'm doing about 20 something, and there's only one that I turned down, and I basically said, I don't think we're going to be a good fit on the day, but I can recommend someone else for you. And they came back to me and said, yes, we had the same feeling. So it tends to be an open kind of conversation. I have to say that in the past, I have done it in the sense that I'm saying, I'm sorry, but I'm no longer available, rather than saying we're not going to be a good fit, because I'm a bit of a wimp. But I don't want to offend people, so I can say, I'm so sorry, I'm no longer available. And I've done that a couple of times before. But I've got a good filter, in terms of my brand. I think it's strong enough, so it doesn't happen all that often. And like I said, it's a blip year for the industry, so photographers would be lying if they said that they were turning down lots of jobs this year, because there's not a lot of work out there. So you tend to have more flexible with what you're willing to take on, because like this year I'm traveling a lot further. I'm doing a wedding in Germany, a wedding in Scotland, and I'm actually not a huge fan of destination weddings, because for me it's just more time away from my family and I have different priorities. But this year, I'm thinking, well, okay, the inquiries aren't coming in as fast and furious as they were last year. So, yep, I'll go to Germany for 3 days. Yep, I'll go to Scotland for 3 days, because that's where the work is. So it's, it comes with, it depends if you have a lot of work coming your way or not, and how willing you are to turn it down.
Yes. Okay, can I have your fifth number, please?
Let's go for 10 then.
Number 10. Okay, so what's the one piece of advice you'd give aspiring wedding photographers? And that question's from Philippa.
Remember that it's all smoke and mirrors. So if you go out and go on Instagram and it looks like all you're seeing is amazing images, remember that those photographers are only showing you the best images that they have. And if there's a situation that you see that where it looks like someone's doing really well, remember they're only ever kind of curating the best of what they've got available to show. So give yourself a break, and remember that as long as you're doing the best that you can, that's all you can ask from yourself.
I think that's a great point. A really important one for your self-esteem and mental health as well.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think we underestimate like the amount of hard work. I mean, if we think about it in terms of SheClicks and female kind of, industry in terms of photography, I will say this, and it's probably controversial, but we women put 6 million% into our work when we go out and shoot. We work so hard, and I think that we are capable as a gender to put ourselves under so much pressure. And I might be wrong, I'm open to conversation, but that's definitely the feeling that I get from being a woman myself, and the conversation that I have with women photographers as opposed to male photographers. Now, we all, all genders will suffer from mental health issues for sure. But yes, we have a tendency to try and find fault with what we do as opposed to automatically celebrating what we do. So I think that it's kind of like trying to remind ourselves we can celebrate what we do. And that doesn't sound arrogant. We can say, oh, actually, I'm doing really well. I'm really proud of myself. And that's not arrogant. That's just an assertion. That's actually really healthy for our mental well-being. So yeah, definitely. Don't give yourself such a hard time.
Yes. Great point. Yeah, I agree. So it's really important to celebrate those successes, small ones as well as the big ones, but just to let people know that something's gone really well and you're happy about it. And actually it makes everyone feel good. So we should all do that more often.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing when, I've done lots, because like I said earlier, I've got quite bad anxiety. So I've done lots of kind of therapy and counselling and all sorts. And it's amazing what just putting your shoulders back and putting your head up, just that action, that's insane what it has on your well-being. If you're feeling down and suddenly you sit up and you put your shoulders back and you put your head up, your body's kind of saying, no, Emily, you're enough, you're okay. And so because your body's doing it, your mind kind of half believes it. So it's quite a powerful action to do. And it's very simple and takes half a second.
Very good point, yes. Okay, can I have your final number then, please?
5? Have I said 5 before?
You haven't said 5 before. Okay, this is a funny one. What is your idea of photography hell? Is there a type of shoot you would avoid at all costs? That's from Anne.
Photography hell for me is newborn shoot in flower pots. That's photography hell for me, in a studio where we put newborns in these really weird, unnatural positions. I could not bring myself to do that. But each their own. I mean, this is not criticism, it's just what I just wouldn't do it.
Fair enough. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really delightful speaking with you, and thank you for answering all those questions.
You're very welcome. Great questions. Really enjoyed responding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll find links to Emily's website and social media channels in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicksNet. So until next time, enjoy your photography.